He wasn't aggressive. He was never aggressive. He just would not let her go near that corner of the garden. For 3 weeks they corrected him, and for 3 weeks he came back and sat down in front of her and would not move. They thought he was confused. He was the only one who wasn't. Pudding was an English bulldog, 4 years old, 53 pounds. A dog of the comfortable sedentary variety who had never in his life been accused of being too alert. The Brennan family had chosen him specifically because their daughter Isla, who was 3 years old and had the energy and spatial reasoning of a Category 2 weather event, needed a dog that would not be overwhelmed. Pudding was famously unoverwhelmable. He slept 12 hours a day. He required no rigorous exercise. He tolerated all of Isla's affections with the stoic goodwill of an animal that had made its peace with a small, loud person as part of its household arrangement, which is why the garden behavior made no sense. The Brennan house had a large rear garden, the kind that had been cultivated by previous owners over many years, established flower beds, an older fruit tree, a vegetable patch that Karen Brennan kept in summer, a stone path that wound along the left border and ended near the back fence. Isla, who had been spending her afternoons in the garden since she could walk, loved the far corner where 2 old rose bushes grew. She called it her castle. In the 3rd week of September, Pudding began blocking the path to the far corner, not barking, not growling, not doing anything that could be called aggressive by any measure. Simply sitting down in the middle of the stone path and becoming, in the way that only bulldogs can become, immovable. Isla would approach the corner path, and Pudding would be in front of her, seated, breathing through his nose the way bulldogs breathe, eyes forward. A 53-pound wall of quiet refusal. Isla would push him. Pudding would lean into the push. She would try to go around. He would shift. She would sit. Karen watched this happen for 3 days before she tried physically moving him aside. Pudding stood, walked 2 feet forward, and sat again. She had never seen him demonstrate this kind of sustained purpose about anything. He had, until this week, had no apparent purposes beyond his food bowl and the sunny end of the couch. Her husband, Declan, suggested the dog had seen a cat near that corner and developed a fixation. Karen considered this. It explained nothing about the persistent, structured nature of his behavior, but it was the available explanation, and she accepted it provisionally. Isla began wailing at the garden corner every afternoon because Pudding would not let her visit her castle. The wailing reached operatic proportions. Pudding sat through all of it. He accepted the wailing with the philosophical composure of an animal that had decided the wailing was preferable to the alternative. By the 2nd week, Karen began watching what Pudding was doing when he sat in the path. He was not watching Isla. He was watching the corner. His eyes tracked that specific area of the garden with the directional attention of a dog monitoring something specific, not a general alertness to the space. A specific reading of a specific area. She called their vet, Dr. Rosemary Tate, who had known Pudding since he was a puppy. Dr. Tate said, "Bulldogs are low-drive dogs, not typically reactive." This sounds like aversion behavior, which usually means something about that space is wrong to him. I'd look at the corner before I corrected him further. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Declan looked at the corner on a Saturday morning. He moved the rose bushes carefully, using gloves, in case there was an animal, a nest, a snake, something that had spooked the dog. What he found under the second rose bush partly buried in the soft soil, was a wasp nest. Not a small one, a ground wasp nest. The kind that built downward into the soil rather than outward, which made it invisible from the surface, which made it undetectable to anyone without a dog's nose. It had been there, by Declan's estimate, for at least a month. Ground wasps, yellow jackets nesting, underground, are among the more dangerous stinging insects in a garden context. Their nests are disturbed by a footfall vibration. A child running directly to the corner of the garden where 2 rose bushes grew. Stepping on the soft soil above the nest would have disturbed it catastrophically. Isla, who ran everywhere, would not have walked. She would have run. The pest control company that Declan called said the nest was large, between 600 and 800 workers. They said, anyone who stepped on this would have been stung extensively. A small child with an unknown allergy history would have been in serious trouble. They said, how did you find it? Declan said, the dog. They were quiet for a moment. The technician said, smart dog. Has your dog ever blocked a specific area of your yard or garden for no reason you could identify? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The nest was removed and treated. The following Monday, Karen brought Isla outside and walked her to the far corner of the garden, to the rose bushes, to her castle. Pudding came along the stone path behind them at his usual bulldogish pace and sat at the edge of the flower bed and watched them walk the perimeter and then lay down in a patch of afternoon sun. He was not blocking anything. Karen looked at him for a long moment. He yawned and put his chin on the warm stone. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Isla knelt beside him and put her hand on his back and said something to him in the specific private language of 3-year-olds and their dogs. Pudding closed his eyes. The afternoon light came through the rose bushes in long, warm strips and lay across both of them in the garden, where nobody had been allowed to go for 3 weeks. The next story involves a dog who began doing something to a wall in a new house, and the discovery that changed how the family thought about their neighborhood.